Welcome to Ladies of Another View on Beck. I am Mary, and today I'm joined with Carmen and Patty, kind of the old crew.
Yeah.
We got a big
Yeah.
day ahead of us. We are going to talk a little bit about Roe v. Wade. We're going to talk about the Fufeng plant, and then we're also going to talk about the Bismarck Bucks last home game in Bismarck. But first of all, I want to welcome Dana Sande to the program. He is the City Council President of Grand Forks, North Dakota. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Thank you, Mary. Really nice to be here today.
I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I know we've had some attempts in the past and things didn't work out, and I understand you're off on a trip this afternoon, so we appreciate you being here.
Right.
So why don't, first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Born and raised in Grand Forks. I'm third generation Grand Forks native. My father's side of the family came from Thief River Falls, Minnesota. And actually the family still owns the original family farmstead. My mother's side of the family is from Rhode Island. And so my parents met on a blind date in college in Boston. Ultimately, after medical school, my dad came back to Grand Forks because he knew that this was a great place to raise a family. And I'm very fortunate for that. So again, born and raised here. I'm last class of the Grand Forks Central Redskins, 1991. I went to UND, both undergrad and grad school. My undergrad is in mathematics, and then I did a master's of business with an emphasis in finance and economics. Spent a fair amount of time working in Fargo for a software company. I was head of sales for a small software company, Fortune 400 software company, and ultimately I ended up being recruited to come work for the UND Aerospace Foundation here in Grand Forks to sell the excess capacity of the Odegaard School of Aerospace Sciences. So for the last 17 years, I've been selling curriculum development, software development, software hosting, certainly pilot training and air traffic control training. So lots of things, kind of the jack of all trades here for the Aerospace Foundation. I unfortunately have been married for 20 years to the same person. We're very happily married. My wife, Megan, and I have twins that are boy-girl twins that are going to be seniors at Red River this year. So a lot of fun things going on in our lives, but we're all very, very, very busy. So
Wonderful. Wow. You know, I look at that and I have your resume here on the city's page, and it's a mile long. So it sounds like you've done a lot of things, and you've just touched on it. So that's interesting. But we realize too, or understand that just according on the city council page, that you also had a lot to do with bringing the Chinese into the school for the aerospace program as well. Like, what are the ties to China? Did you go to spend any time over there, or what got you interested in that segment of our world?
Actually, we were approached by an American who was a captain for U.S. Airways, who he had been working in China and had an associate that had some ties to some of the airlines there, and so they brought the opportunity for potentially doing some international flight training here at UND. We, of course, the university had been training Taiwanese pilots for many years, and actually the executives at both EVA Airlines and China Airlines are both graduates of the University of North Dakota. So UND has a very well-respected name in aviation in Asia because of the fact that many of the airlines leaders in Asia were trained here in Grand Forks. And so the pilot demand all across Asia, whether it's in China or South Korea or Vietnam, the pilot demand is large. And we ultimately had been looking because the undergraduate population at UND had declined significantly from 2005 to 2008. So the school was looking for a way to continue to spread all of its fixed costs, all of its personnel and all the costs of the airplanes across more students. And the best way to do that was to supplement the undergraduate population here on campus with international students. And so we weren't specifically looking for Chinese students, but they came to us.
Right. Can I just ask, as someone from the outside looking in, how did that work for you then? Did you need to learn to speak Chinese? Did you need to go to China to recruit students? I mean, you said they came to you, but I would assume at some point you had to meet somewhere to kind of line up all the
Certainly.
things, right?
Yeah, no, I do not speak Mandarin.
Okay.
English is the international language of aviation. So all of the people that we deal with on the Chinese airlines, they all speak English. So, but certainly I have been to China multiple times, meeting with the airlines. The airlines have been to Grand Forks. They've been to our Phoenix location multiple times.
Okay.
And so that makes me wonder, because the topic of the day is Fufeng and Grand Forks, and of course we know there's a lot of controversy there. I'm wondering if the connection with the flight training and your relationship with them, did that have anything to do with them approaching Grand Forks for the to build a corn processing plant?
I don't see how anyone could actually make that leap, because when Fufeng put out their RFP and sent it to multiple states, the one that they sent to the North Dakota Department of Commerce, it only included the counties in southeast North Dakota. The Grand Forks County wasn't even included in their area that they were requesting information for. And as a matter of fact, it was the Department of Commerce in the state of North Dakota that suggested to Fufeng that they should increase the area that they would look at to the entire eastern side of North Dakota. So we weren't even in the original discussion.
Okay, can you tell us when that was? I mean, I'm trying to get a timeline going in my head for when they would have recommended Fufeng to expand their reach for their RFP.
I can tell you exactly when that was, if you give me a second. I actually have it here. In June 19th, 2020.
Okay. Okay, so that was the first that Grand Forks even got anything.
That is correct.
That
the Department of Commerce had it prior to that. We got it June 19th, 2020.
Sure. Okay.
They revised their RFP and sent it out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that's interesting. The Department of Commerce then knew about it clearly before the city of Grand Forks even knew that they were in the running. Is that right?
That is correct.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. We have been visiting with City Council President Dana Sande, and he has joined us via the internet, and thanking him because it's a beautiful day. Number one, he's missing a golf tournament, and number two, he's getting ready for an overseas trip. So we do appreciate spending the afternoon with us, Dana.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to the show. So we were before the break, we were talking about how it came to be that Grand Forks was chosen. A lot of the people are questioning why they didn't talk more to the Air Force base, or why wasn't that part addressed? Because it's my understanding that it's not supposed to be within 100 miles of an Air Force base, and yet we're about 10 or 13 miles away. Address that for us, please.
So I don't know the exact distance, but it has to be a certain distance from a specific category of military establishment, which Grand Forks Air Force Base doesn't meet that category. The Cavalier base does, and it is more than far enough away from the Cavalier base to meet all the regulations.
But I thought Cavalier was about 65 miles, which is still within that 100-mile radius.
I don't know if it's 100 miles. I don't believe that's actually true. I don't know, though. I don't know the distance it has to be. What I do know is it is far enough away from Cavalier Air Force Base and the Cavalier Air Station. And that has been confirmed by Grand Forks Air Force Base.
Oh, okay. So is there some documentation or something that you could maybe share with us regarding that?
I don't think I have it in writing, but I have had discussions with Colonel Curry, and he's, again, consistently said that there are no issues with the Fufeng plant locating in Grand Forks.
Oh,
Colonel Curry, the wing commander from Grand Forks Air Force Base.
Okay.
And I do have that in writing.
Okay. I was just wondering, when Grand Forks got this RFP and you started looking at it, what kinds of models or what did you use to kind of look at the economics of the whole thing and see, is this a viable thing for Grand Forks? Can you kind of walk us through your process?
So I wasn't in on the very initial discussions because the owners of Fufeng wanted to keep the concept quiet. They didn't want a big publicity event going on around.
But why would that
Trying to
be? Why,
attract
why
them.
would they? I don't want to interrupt, but that is an important piece. Why would they want to keep that quiet?
Well, I guess perhaps I misstated. We wanted to keep it quiet because we didn't want other areas of the country, other areas where they were looking, knowing that we were responding, because we wanted to attempt to keep some sort of competitive advantage, whatever advantage that we thought we had. So we were keeping it quiet. I don't recall if they specifically had said that they wanted it quiet, but I know that we were attempting to keep it quiet because we didn't want other communities. We didn't want the folks in Iowa knowing that we were bidding on it. So where was I going with that? So ultimately, we were keeping it quiet. We were talking internally, again, the mayor, economic development, Todd Phelan, Dan Gosted, the administration within the city. They had been talking about, well, what are the pros and cons of a factory like this? Of course, the pros are all of the jobs and all of the ancillary jobs that come with a factory of this size. They know that, in government, when you're looking for primary sector is always what cities are trying to attract, because it typically comes with lots of good paying, stable jobs. And so as a primary sector manufacturing facility, it's right up the alley of what all economic development in all cities are trying to attract, these sorts of facilities. And so when you start saying what kind of models are you looking at, I don't think there were so much models. It's primary sector. Everybody that's in the economic development world knows that primary sector is where the best jobs are for steady working people. And so was there some sort of strategy based upon, well, it's a, how do we pencil this out? That really I don't think that was the case. They're a primary sector organization looking to bring lots of manufacturing jobs to our community. How many? Well, how many are you going to employ? Wow, it's 233 people. Then we looked at, okay, well, if there's 233, what kind of trucking are you going to have? What kind of rail are you going to have? What does that translate into additional jobs? 570, whatever. Of course, it becomes from the economic development side, it becomes a no-brainer. This is exactly the sort of thing we want to drive good jobs for our community.
So I just wanted to follow up, if I could.
Go ahead.
So when we look at the unemployment rate in North Dakota, when we look at the shortage of labor, is there anything in the contracts with Fufeng where they would want to bring X number of people from China into the plant so that they can kind of set up their process to how they want their plant to run? Are they going to have some key people that they're kind of putting in there? Do you know, is that part of the deal?
That there isn't anything related to who will be the employees in the plant, in the development agreement, but they're on record on multiple council meetings saying that the jobs are going to Americans. They're going to be recruiting people from around here. Now, there may be transient engineers from China that come to town to help work on the construction of the facility. That I don't know. Not when I say work on it, meaning the design, that sort of thing. They're not going to be bringing construction folks from China to here to build the plant. They're going to be hiring both local and regional, national construction companies to come and build the plant. Again, the engineering side of the plant may be done in China. I don't know. I know they've already engaged a local engineering firm in Grand Forks that has ties to a national engineering firm, Black and Veatch. So they're already working on designs. So again, will there be Chinese folks that come here to help with the design or the engineering? I honestly don't know. I don't believe so, but I'm
Okay.
not sure.
So it makes sense that you would put a bid in economic development. Everybody wants that for their city. So that makes sense. But this is a little more complicated because it's China and we're talking about concerns of espionage and forced labor. And it's a complicated country because it's a communist country. So once you put that bid in, because it usually is what makes sense for your community, because of the complications, is there an ongoing screening and investigation? Because I don't have to even begin to tell you all the different issues that are coming up over and above economic, environmental, but national security issues. And I think that's what's getting the most noise over this. Is there are you just have it in your mind, we put in the bid, we want this to happen? Or is there a way that you are continually looking at, is this the right decision? Is this a safe decision for Grand Forks and for our country?
Good question. I'm not an international espionage expert. I certainly am relying on our federal government, our state government, our local FBI, our local police department. I'm talking to the Department of Defense out at the Air Force Base. I'm being reassured, and certainly I don't want any issues any more than anyone else does. Every time I talk to somebody who is in authority, the message is always the same. There isn't an issue with Fufeng related to espionage or international, our international security. It's just not. There isn't anything to it.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. We are visiting with Dana Sande. He is the council city president of Grand Forks, city council president. There it is. Anyway, welcome back to the show, Dana.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for sticking around. We appreciate it. And like we talked during the break, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now or in the country. There's the Roe v. Wade, but this is so important locally, and we just want to get everyone on the same page as to what's going on exactly, because not everybody goes to the city council meetings. So again, we appreciate you being here. So let's go back to the economic side of it again. Were there any specific, say, economic models that were used to say that there's going to be a benefit to Grand Forks, or is this just, are we relying on what the Chinese have told us is going to be good for us?
Again, the economic model for the city of Grand Forks is jobs, right? So ultimately, they're for the people of Grand Forks, the two types of benefits, jobs that are provided locally for our citizens, which again, 233 direct jobs, 570 indirect jobs. So 800 jobs averaging 60,000 or better in our community is pretty significant. Sure. In addition to that, it's property taxes that they're going to pay. And of course, they did get a pilot payment in lieu of taxes. So they are getting a tax break over the first 20 years, but they're going to be paying $1 million in property taxes year one. And in year 21, they're paying close to $6 million in property taxes. And so when you look at the general fund for the city of Grand Forks and the entire general fund tax levy is $40 million, when you're talking adding $6 million in revenue, it's 15% of your general fund revenues. That's a significant contribution from their facility, which will be able to keep to allow us to keep property taxes down for the rest of our citizens in Grand Forks. In addition to that, they're directly paying $10 million for upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant, which we were going to have to do anyway because the plant's 20 plus years old and it was due for a major overhaul. And so now Fufeng is directly paying for that, which will keep our water rates down for our local citizens. So when you start talking the economics of it, there are a lot of economic benefits from bringing a plant of this magnitude to our community.
Okay, and unfortunately we can't keep you all day, so I want to quickly, I had taken another note. Is the city participating in any active CFIUS review of the project? Is there one ongoing right now or not?
We are, we've engaged with an attorney that will review the concept to let us know if we can. We don't believe we actually can do a CFIUS review. We can't put in for it. They need to instigate it. We can recommend that they do it. And our attorney is reviewing to see whether it's actually legal for us to do that.
Can I ask, okay, the economic development, obviously, there's, in the big picture, there's billions of dollars involved in all of this for the city of Grand Forks, for the state, and I get that. But at what point, where's the thought process for, because one of the big things in the world we live in right now, the country we live in right now is so on edge about so many things, and the whole thing about forced labor from China, and how there is the law in America that you cannot benefit from forced labor with this business. And then I've done some research on, you know, where they're producing some of the materials that they would have to import to do their business, and it is forced labor. And so where's the thought process? I mean, where does it stop with the city? Have you discussed that as a council? What's the breaking point where you say, no, I don't care how much economic development this brings us, the forced labor piece puts it to the side. We can't do this because of the forced labor. Do you have definitions of that for people, where
Sure.
it stops?
I've publicly said that if it's proven that Fufeng is using forced labor, that I would not support bringing the corn milling plant to our community. So the issue is there is no proof that they're using forced labor. If they actually are, and they're going to be importing goods, they have to prove that they're not to Customs and Border Protection. And so they'll either prove that they're not or they won't. And for me, it's either they are or they're not. And,
So
and
do
if
they have
are,
to-
then for me, that's a red line.
Do they have to prove that before certain pieces of getting this plant up and built and running? Does that have to be proved first, or can things proceed before that's proved?
You know, I don't know the process for them to do that, right? It's not in my wheelhouse,
Okay.
so I'm not sure where that is in the process. They assure us that there's no forced labor in any of their inputs. And so I'm not naive enough to trust everyone at their word. But when we have the conversations and we say, if it's found out that you're using forced labor, the whole thing is going to go up in smoke, and they assure me that they're not, I would take them at their word, because are they going to want to, invest 700 million in our community, and then we find out they're using forced labor and tell them, I'm sorry, we're not giving you your permit.
But I think that's where a lot of the problem lies right now. It's like we're taking a lot of things at their word. Like you mentioned earlier, that there's nothing in the contract about bringing any of their laborers over here. There's nothing in the contract about the forced labor, or you don't think that there's any forced labor on the other end when they're building different components that we're going to import in. And so we're just taking everything at their word. And I think that's where a lot of people have trouble. It's like, can we really trust the Chinese communist country at their word?
Mm-hmm. And I would say, because I looked at your resume, Dina, I would want you on my team. I want to be on your team. And
Sure.
I figure all the environmental stuff, there's people a lot smarter than the rest of us that have to figure that out. But for the regular person, we can all understand the fear of espionage. And like you said, nobody around you is worried about that. But at what point, I'm worried that once you're already so far ahead, when do you stop looking and you're just like, well, it's a done deal? At what point can you keep looking, and should we even be going there? Because they do have a track record, they do have cases of espionage. And I don't know if I put that into a good question for you, but do you understand our concern? And it kind of piggybacks on what Mary just said. There's a trust level issue, and at what point can we ever trust them enough?
So the Fufeng is not a new organization, right? They've been around a long time. They are, yes, 60% owned by Chinese, with Chinese money, whether it's the gentleman that's the majority owner or other investment folks that are in China. But there are also significant institutional investors who have vetted their organization. I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and when the likes of Vanguard and Fidelity International, who are US investment companies, are major investors in Fufeng. For all we know, the four of us have Vanguard mutual funds. It certainly is possible. These organizations vet them to make sure that there aren't any issues. So asking me if I should be spending my time vetting Fufeng, I'm thinking about it. I'm worried about it. Sure. Do I want any issues? Of course not. I also know that there are a lot of organizations that have a lot more to lose than our community that are already investigating them to make sure that there aren't any issues, because they don't want any issues for their investors. I mean, if the money that they have invested comes from all over the world. Yes, it's majority Chinese, but it's certainly not. There's a significant amount that comes out of the US. Many people are already invested in them and they don't even know.
Okay, so before we cut you loose, because we're running out of time here, I just have another quick question. Did the city receive certification from the North Dakota Department of Commerce that the Fufeng project was categorized as a primary sector business before granting a pilot tax incentive to Fufeng?
I don't think we got any sort of a certificate, but they're a manufacturing company. That's primary sector. I don't
Okay,
think we got any, they didn't print us a certificate or anything and say it, but they're a manufacturer, they're primary sector, that's what they are.
okay. All right, so is there anything else, just real quickly, 30 seconds or less, that you want to add or tell our viewers before we let you go?
We are, I'm never 100% sold on any project. I'm paying a lot of attention to this, obviously, because there are a lot of moving parts to it. So although I do believe that the plant more than likely will be built, that doesn't mean we aren't going to be making sure that they're doing the right thing with water, and they're doing the right thing with the odor, and doing the right thing with the discharge of wastewater. We're paying attention, and we have the checks and balances in our development agreement to make sure that if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that we can shut them down.
All right, Dana, thanks so much for your time today. Safe travels on your trip. And
Thank you so much.
I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.